tell the folks about kind of your background as far as business. You're rocking the MIT sweatshirt proudly. I'm sure, you're pretty sharp upstairs. You got the Amazon stuff and all that. You got the new family stuff going on as well. So a busy guy, but tell me kind of TJ, how you sort of ended up at MIT, why you went there versus other schools, besides the obvious that it's awesome, but, kind of give the folks a little bit of background about you.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I just loved to build stuff. I spent a lot of time outside building random things from, surfboards to things like structures out of wood, and kind of decided that I wanted to be an engineer just based off of that. Originally, it was an architect, but then I found out in school that I was decent at math. So played a lot of sports growing up and did pretty well in school. And the football coach at MIT, believe it or not, they got a football team. He reached out and said, hey, I might be able to help you get into school if you want to come here. So
That's a lot, bro.
Yeah, so I got recruited as a linebacker, but I'm only about 180 pounds. So very, very quickly in college, I was moved to safety. And
what division?
Stuck D3. It's a Division 3. The teams actually, they're not bad these days, but when I was there, we were kind of on the up and coming. But I only did that for a year. I just kept getting beat up with like concussions and whatnot. So was also playing lacrosse. So I played lacrosse instead at MIT and got a degree in mechanical engineering. Right out of school,
what is the prestige or the premier degree to get at MIT? Because I feel like mechanical engineering degrees, you can get them, and obviously they're going to be tough wherever you go. But I think at MIT, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult than, say a normal school.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think engineering's hard anywhere you go. I didn't go to grad school or anything like that, so I have nothing to compare it off of. But, it was tough. It was definitely way different than high school. It was a lot more difficult. I had to learn how to learn, is what they say.
And have you always been interested, like engineering per se? Because you said you like to build stuff. You said you were good at math. And did engineering just feel like the calling, based on your skill set and what you're passionate about, and kind of you just grew into that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, like when I think about what are the things that really move the needle for society, for humanity, a lot of it comes down to engineering, technology, and, you think about some of like the great leaders of today, like, Elon Musk, I guess, comes to mind. He's an engineer, he's trying to send us to Mars. He's building these cars that run on electricity and a bunch of other projects. So that stuff always fascinated me, just being able to push technology forward and, contribute that way. And it scratched the itch for me for, working with my hand, but also working with my brain. So, I was lucky enough after school, I got a job at a startup that was doing pretty much exactly what I wanted to be doing at the time. It was consumer electronics. The company was called Blink, and we did smart home security cameras. So got the job there. The team was real small. I was actually the first mechanical engineer to be hired at the company.
This was right out of school. You had no previous experience actually doing the job you got the degree in, right?
Yeah, not really. I mean, MIT was pretty good about, they had a lot of classes that were hands-on, and they had a lot of really, really awesome lab spaces to learn how to do things like injection molding and, work with like mills and lathes, and a bunch of classes on, how to go through the design process. And then I had an internship at a similar company the summer prior. But no, I was like very green, and it's funny that they gave me a shot, because usually when you hire the first person in some category, you want them to have some experience that they bring with it, right?
Right. They can help sort of create the system because they've already done it before.
Exactly, and I hadn't. So I just kind of started from what they had, which there was a bunch of smart people running the company, and they helped me to figure out what our process was going to look like. And 6 months after I joined the company, we were acquired by Amazon, which was pretty awesome. And then, from there on out, we've been a part of Amazon.
Did you get some stock in that deal when you guys got acquired?
Yeah. So, was basically hired at Amazon on an accelerated track, essentially. So I didn't really have any vested shares from the company when it sold. But when we were purchased, all of the employees got, a big bump. And for the next 6 years, I was able to run my own projects, contribute meaningfully, get promoted a couple times, and really set the stage for my investing career.
Nice, dude. So you only got 6 months in at Blink. It sounds like that was a huge score for you because you came in right before this company was going to get bought out by obviously Amazon, which is, a massive global conglomerate. And they kept your team on, and then you got promoted there and you helped them build some back-end systems as well. So you were at Amazon, and where were you working remotely at Amazon, or were you going in? Because they're Seattle based, right? But they're obviously international now.
Our office was based in, and still is based in Boston. And when we were acquired, we kept that location. I was going into the Boston office.
Got it. And how big was your team? Because you said your team started out smaller at Blink, and then you got into Amazon. And how big what was the transition from team size to sort of roles and all of that?
They left us alone for the most part, they being Amazon. And a lot of other funny things were happening in tandem. They acquired Ring, similar company.
They like the doorbell space.
Yeah, it's been good to them. It was right around 2017. It was a time when smart home was becoming a new category. But our team to start, it was on the hardware side, maybe like 3 or 4 of us. And then now it's probably like 30 plus.
Got it. Oh, you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still there.
And what is your official title, TJ?
I think it's senior product designer.
Nice. And are you working remotely now, or are you working at the office, or some of both?
Yeah, so, part of the story is when COVID hit, my wife and I, we were both from Long Island, and we decided that, we wanted to come back to where our parents were. So we made the switch, and the whole team worked remote for a long time, a couple of years. And then when people started coming back to the office, I was able to work it out with my team to be remote full time. So that's what I do now.
Love it. Sweet, dude. All right. So let's kind of transition into how you got into capital raising, why real estate, why raising capital, kind of how you pick, the asset classes that you like and why. You're obviously a very sharp guy. We met at a mastermind, so you're out there talking to people. You read a lot of articles. You're also a prolific writer. All your stuff is super interesting.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, man. There's obviously a lot of stuff that we read, and, I feel like your stuff is genuine. I feel like you put time, thought, and energy into it. I feel like you're being reflective and you're sharing those data points. And it's not sort of just like, hey, I'm TJ and I run Burns Capital, send me more money. It's kind of like, hey, this is what's happening and why, and this is the reasoning behind it. And I think that stands out. And there's capital raisers out there, there's operators out there, there's all kinds of people who do all kinds of things. But I think the guys who are genuine, and you're genuine as a person, I think that ends up shining and kind of setting itself apart. So I wanted to mention that. So prolific writer as well, always posting good stuff, putting good content out there for other people in the space and for potential investors, which I think is huge because sometimes people need, some help to understand and get comfortable about what they're doing and who they're doing it with before they're willing to press send on that wire. And so when someone who's willing to take the time to share information and show that value and the reasoning behind it, I think it helps people get over that hump. So let's talk about why you choose why you're raising capital now for, you said a fund, and kind of go through the history of the types of assets you've invested in the past and what you learned from those, and then why you're raising specifically for this type of investment now.
All right, yeah. I'll start right at the beginning because it kind of ties everything together. But as I, was working in tech, I realized I wanted to diversify, outside of the stock I was getting, outside of the stock market in general. Started looking at single family homes like everybody else, and
shout out Bigger Pockets.
Yeah, exactly. And small multifamily in a couple different markets. Really had shiny object syndrome for a couple years and spun my wheels. Really didn't learn a ton, but didn't buy anything until right around 2020. And in 2020, I bought a new construction single family home down in the great state of Florida for God knows what reason. I thought I found a good niche down there.
What city?
It was in Cape Coral.
Nice.
Yeah, it worked out. I mean, I caught the wave with that one, but the construction process took 16 months instead of the advertised 4 months.
Wait, what? Well, they were saying they were going to build a new house in 4 months and it took them 16?
Yeah, it was during COVID when, everything was on back order basically. So, concrete block, oh, we can't get that for another 2 months.
So rough. Well, I was running 12 crews. I had over 100 employees when COVID hit, W-2.
Wow.
And I'm out in California, dude. So, it was so bad in some areas like LA where you have to send them in a check to pull a permit, and they would just let the envelope sit in the office for a week or two. So my fixed costs were, as you can imagine, really high. All these people on payroll, and we couldn't pull permit. And then, material tightened up. I mean, you know what happened with lumber and all of that. So yes, they had a valid reason. I don't know, obviously, all the ins and outs of what happened down there. But you bought a house. It took a little longer than expected. So you started in the game when you actually invested, already walking through sort of, what it takes to get to the other side. It's not always all rainbows and butterflies. So you started kind of earning your own experience stripes, as, for lack of a better word. And then tell me about, the next play you did and kind of what you learned from that.
So that one, I learned a little bit about the construction process, like you said. It got me over the hump too. The first deal you do that you're afraid to make any moves. That was the one for me. And after that, I bought a small duplex where I live as a house hack. And I thought that was another fantastic step. Shout out Bigger Pockets. Yeah. And, I still recommend that to a lot of people that are trying to get in the game, and especially if they're young and they have flexibility in where they can live.
Oh, yeah.
So, we lived in one side, we rented one side out, and, I self-managed it. And
love the house,
and then
house hacking, bro. It's great. It's great.
It is, yeah. And then eventually, when we moved out, I turned one unit into a short-term rental, because I wanted the experience of what's it like to run a short-term rental business, right? So I did that as well, and then I also wanted to know what it was like to transact real estate. So I got my realtor license. I sold 5 houses locally, and that was enough for me to realize I didn't want to do that anymore. But it was great in terms of learning the language of real estate and learning how to, transact on deals.
Were you on the buy side?
No, I was on the sell side for all of them. I realized very, very early on that I didn't want to be on the buy side. It seemed, at least in the residential world, it seemed like a lot of people that were very indecisive, right? So I wanted to lock in, who I was working with, and then go and do my thing, as opposed to maybe doing a lot of free work.
Got it. Okay, so you bought the property. Is a new construction project during COVID down in Florida, where you don't live. You then got into house hacking. You bought a duplex. You lived in one. You rented out the other one. You started learning how to be a landlord. And then from there, you moved out, created an STR. So you learned the STR space, managing that project or that property. Tell me about what happened after that and kind of your next move in real estate, and why, after you closed on, 5 deals and decided that you didn't want to act as an agent.
So around the same time, I was still living in Boston.
Is this, by the way, this was what, 2020
This is all around 2020 or so. Yeah. And some of it overlaps and whatnot. Kind of the next phase of my career was, I was living in Boston. I was coming back from a buddy's house late one night, and I'm walking on the streets in South Boston, and I see this lump in the road, and I go check it out, and it's a wallet, right? Open up the wallet, see whose it is. In my head, I'm like, okay, great, I'll return this to the person, I'll find them online. Go home, look them up, and it's a pretty successful real estate investor. Somebody doing a lot of the stuff that I want to be doing. Buying small multifamily, refinancing, selling properties, dealing with all the ups and downs associated. And I was like kind of still in the phase of didn't have my confidence yet in real estate, so I was just going to give it back. And my wife encouraged me to ask the individual if, more about his business and if I could get involved. So when I gave him his wallet back, I said, hey, if you're ever looking for capital, then maybe, we could work together, because I thought that was probably the only way that I could bring value to this individual was to carve off some of the money that I was making at Amazon and to go invest alongside him.
Yep.
And, this is before I knew anything about syndications, private equity. In my head, I honestly thought he would be doing me a favor to let, me invest.
Ragnarsson, he's awesome. Like TJ said, he invests in small multifamily. He has a whole system for finding these properties. He actually has he has a coaching program that I actually bought that he spent a lot of time to make. It breaks down how to start a business, how to name your business, how to build a brand, how to go out and after, acquire these customers, et cetera, or sellers, I should say. So shout out Axel. And I thought it was a really cool story. So wait, so you were saying your wife encouraged you to reach out to him?
Yeah, so I was going to give him his wallet back anyway, but I decided that it was a good opportunity to maybe see if I could work with him in some way. And, for me, I realized that the best way to do that was to offer to invest in cash with him.
So let me just jump in right there, TJ. So for any of you who want to essentially get a mentor or have someone give you some guidance, or has already walked through a path, the best way to essentially get that person to work with you is to come to them with something of value or create value in their life or their business world. Because there's a lot of people that walk around like this with their hand out wanting something. But if you can give something to someone else, they're going to be much more inclined to want to do business with you, interact with you. And that goes for, personal and business relationships, right? There's obviously a book called The Go-Giver. That's a huge one. But if I can bring value to someone, actual value to their life, they're going to be more inclined to talk to me. So TJ's approach in regard to Axel was, hey, this guy goes out and buys multifamily properties. I'm already doing him a service by bringing him his wallet back, but he does what I kind of want to do or something else that I want to learn in my career. What would he need? Oh, he needs capital probably because he's putting these deals together, he's syndicating them. If I can go raise capital, I'm bringing something of valuable that he can plug right into his business. Then from that, I can build a relationship and learn something. So wanted to throw that in. It's really important when you're looking for mentors, not just to be saying, hey, will you mentor me? But hey, I can bring this in your business, and in return, I'd like to just pick your brain.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And, it helps to be as specific as possible because sometimes people will reach out and say, hey, what can I do for you? And that's hard too, because now, I got to go figure out something that I can give to you. And that's a little bit of work as well. So
you want to take things off of their desk, not put things on their desk.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So, with Axel, it probably couldn't have found a better person's wallet. Did a couple deals with him as an LP and, he made me some money doing that. And it kind of got me hooked on being a passive investor. Did about a dozen more deals. And then again, with Axel, approached him and said, hey, if there's ever a chance for us to be more active partners, then let me know. And there was, so one of the next deals he did, we co-sponsored it and I helped him raise some of the cash and got to shadow him a bit with asset management. And that was the launch of my business, and that was about 2 years ago.
That's great. So tell me kind of what you've learned so far and break down, TJ, the difference between an LP and a GP, what you prefer, and then you could even jump into being an operator if you're comfortable there, telling me kind of what the pros and cons are to each, because there's always upside, there's always downside, in anything that you do. So LP versus GP versus being an operator, can you break down for the folks listening what the differences are and what the pros and cons are, or sort of, the risk versus the reward?
Absolutely, yeah. So LPGP, that's, it's kind of slang for private equity, really, or any kind of private investment. It means limited partner is the LP side, and then general partner, GP side. So the relationship there is really who has the control of the deal and who does not have control but is really just investing passively. So your LPs are the ones that are bringing capital to the deal, but their liability is limited. Their control is also limited, hence, the limited partner. And what they're doing is they're investing their money with a GP, a general partner, entrusting that person is going to manage it properly. So the GP is the one that's really doing all the work. And in real estate, that's finding the deal, managing the deal, eventually some exit strategy with the deal. So the GPs are the ones that are doing all of that, right? And when you throw in operator typically means the person that is actually in charge of all those things. They're actually operating the deal. And as you get more into the private equity type stuff, you kind of see there's a difference between GPs, like more specifically a GP that's an operator is the one that's managing everything versus, somebody like a fund manager, where their role is more limited to the finance side of things and the money.
Yeah, I think that's a good explanation. Maybe we can dive in, if we do have time, a little bit more, sort of what the pros and cons are to both. We talked a little bit about, limiting sort of your exposure as an LP, right? You're not signing on any debt as an LP. You're basically put your money into a deal. You're trusting that the GPs are going to do what they say they're going to do to create value in that deal, pay you your distributions or your return, whatever that pro forma is projecting, and that they are going to do right by you. And then you have the GP who's essentially sourcing that deal, vetting that deal, signing on the debt for that deal, and basically doing all the heavy lifting, as you said, and oftentimes or sometimes putting their own capital and sometimes not putting their own capital in the deal. And then you have operators who are actually managing all of those components and the asset, as you move forward, depending on the exit strategy. So yeah, it's a very common way to syndicate large investments in the real estate space. With that model, it's very common. Now, the execution of it sometimes can be challenging, like any deal in real estate, as we know, if you're really in real estate. When it comes time to close, man, once that pressure cooker turns on, it's time to go, right? And we all love that thrill, I think. I think it can become addicting. It's like you love it and you hate it all at the same time. But once it's done, you want to do it again. And I relate to running for me, TJ, so that marathon's brutal, dude, when you're in it. It's like mile 20, dude, it's brutal, bro. Mile 23. Yeah. But when you're done, bro, it's only a couple days, a week goes by, and you start to feel like, I want to do that again. And
you book the next one.
I relate that to the capital raising, closing portion of real estate as well, because there's no other thing like it, I don't think.
You're right, man. Yeah, there's the highest highs and sometimes the lowest lows, depending on what happens.
Well, you got to feel that pressure too to really know what we're talking about. If you don't know, you need to get with someone like TJ, like myself, someone like Axel who's doing this, because there's obviously a lot of operators out there. There's a tremendous amount of capital raisers, but when you're doing business, then you're putting your hard-earned money on the line. You want to do it with people that you can trust, that know how to vet deals, that are working with good operators and good partners, GPs, LPs, etc., that are going to make sure that they take care of your money. That's really important. But the other side of that is, when we do it, it's always sort of you're under the gun. And until it's really, really scary until you do it, was my point. And then once you do it, you kind of understand what you're getting yourself into. And that fear portion goes away of what if, and it's more like, we need to get going now. And there's still always going to be a little bit of that, like, what if we don't make it? But you learn different ways through experience of how to potentially maybe get more time to navigate that water more. If we have to release a little bit of, our EMD, we call it out in California, the earnest money deposit. There's ways that you can navigate that water, assuming that it's a good deal. So, but you don't learn that until you get going. And I talk about this on this podcast all the time. You got to get going, because that's the only way to gain experience. All right. So you started being on the GP side with Axel. You did quite a few LP deals. You're still doing Amazon. So you have a tremendous amount of people in tech. Shout out to Burns Capital. He does speak the tech language. So if you're in tech, he'd be a great resource for you. If you're an MIT guy, great resource for you. A developer, software guy, great resource for you. I personally really like TJ, like I said, super obviously sharp guy, but honest, hardworking. Anyone that can get out there and run a marathon, I think generally speaking, it takes a little bit to do that, some inner fortitude. So let's get into some of the meat of this. TJ, you took the time to fill out our handy questionnaire. So let's go through some of these questions, man, because we did some free form. So, favorite real estate quote or mantra? And your answer is, there is no substitute for hard work. So can you break that down a little bit for the people?
So there are a lot of things marketed online as shortcuts. There's groups you can join. There's ways you can trade your money for these so-called shortcuts. But what I found is that there really aren't many. There is no substitute for actually just doing the work, for putting the time in. It's slow, it's a grind at first. At least I found, when you start any kind of business, you put a lot into it. At first, you put a lot of money into it, a lot of time into it. There's risk involved, and there's no substitute for that period. You got to go through it. So, building my business has been hard work for the last couple of years. And that's why I like the quotes, because I think everybody thinks there's a shortcut, but there isn't.
Love that, dude. We talk about that all the time. I think any entrepreneur, anyone that's doing something of value, understand that you just got to get going, and you're going to take some hits along the way. You're going to get better, right? Rinse, repeat, fail fast, learn, break that down, get better, get better, get better. And, you can't start getting better until you're in the game. You can't start creating a track record until you get on the track. Andy Rosenberg, my buddy, made a quote about that, about getting on the track before you can have a track record. You got to get started, dude. Bottom line, and you can't be overwhelmed or overcome by fear. Yes, everyone that's ever done anything I think of value has felt fear and walked through it. And no one's perfect. No one is built without fear. I think it's an innate thing in humans. It's how you handle it, how you walk through it, how you continue to get better, how you challenge yourself, right? Those are the things that matter, dude. And no one, I think that, does anything substantial is looking at a new guy and being like, you suck, you're not going to make it. There's a lot of people being like, hey, dude, you can do it, right? I think there's a lot of haters out there who maybe for lack of, a million different reasons why are more inclined to take shots at someone else who's given it a shot than someone else who's actually either in the trenches with you or has already walked through those trenches. So I will say that. Okay, I love that so much. There's no substitute for hard work. Spoken like a true runner, ultra marathon runner. All right, so let's talk about some topics that we haven't talked about on another podcast, because you are an experienced podcaster. So let's talk about skipping the lines. So the last thing we just talked about is there's no substitute for hard work. Really no line skipping hacks. But the point of this whole podcast is to create some nuggets that will help you along your journey. But those two things they are congruent, because
hey, that's the nugget right there. The nugget is there are no shortcuts.
Yeah, it's nugget. Yes, you can read books. Yes, you can talk to people. You can get mentorship, and you can align yourself with groups and individuals who are doing it, as TJ alluded to with Axel, right? So I'm sure by being in business with Axel, he learned a lot and probably saved himself some heartache that had he not aligned himself with someone who was more experienced, he might have gone through even, a more difficult journey. So yes, I think that what we're trying to do is help people create some nuggets, and along their path, you still got to do the hard work. You're still going to take some hits, but, help them try to avoid, the larger ones or any sort of advice we can give them. All right. So some topics you haven't spoken about. Number one, my 19-year-old landscaper landed a job with me and is now my right-hand man at Burns Capital Partners. This is cool. Let me hear about this, dude.
Yeah, I've been excited to tell this story. I haven't told this on a podcast yet, and it's definitely skip the lines material, because this young man, he's kind of forging his own path. But so going back when I was selling houses, I got a cold email one day from a young guy, 18 years old, just graduated high school, and it said something along the lines of, hey, I'm in this business of real estate photography. I would love to come by and, do a project for you. Here's some photos that I've taken already. And I just admired that he was out there, marketing, hustling. And he was also a bit cheaper than everybody else. So I was like, all right, I'll give you a shot. Come meet me at this address. He was there 10 minutes early, did a great job, brought his drone, took beautiful photos, really just knocked it out of the park.
You're
right.
Kid with some initiative, man, that's also professional.
Yeah, even he had virtual staging. Just very nice kid too, and noted, mentally. And maybe 2 weeks later was like, hey, you got any other jobs? Let me know. So I had him take photos for that Airbnb that, we were setting up, where I was, managing it myself, and I had taken the photos myself, but I wanted to get more professional shots. So I had him do that. again, knocked it out of the park. I said, all right, well, what else can you do? You've been great at these two jobs. What else you got? And he said, well, I do landscaping as well. So I said, great. Well, I got plenty of that. I had him do work at that property. And
Awesome, dude. He's resourceful, man.
yeah, he did work at that property. I would basically just send him a video of like, hey, chop that bush over there, take care of this. And he would do all the work, send me a video back. Pretty soon he was coming to my place to do landscaping work, my house. And I just kept throwing things at him. I was like, all right, well, it kind of became a game to me, and I was very excited to help somebody that was...
Your first, actual employee at the company at Burns Capital?
I had a VA.
Personally, more than the company at that point, right?
Yeah, it was all personally, it wasn't any Burns Capital work at this point. The next thing I had him do was take baby photos for me. So, he took photos of my 4-month-old in a professional setting.
Nice.
And that one, I was like, can you do this?
You watched
and
The
he's
Office
like, I probably...
by chance?
The what?
The Office, the show. Did you used to watch it?
A little bit.
Oh, okay. You probably wouldn't know the reference.